It started with an error in judgment, a choice made not out of malice, but arrogance. Subcommander Kairvath of the Varnak coalition believed he had outgrown fear, that logic and control were the only laws that mattered. During a quiet operation on the edge of human-colonized space, a covert extraction team infiltrated an agricultural station on Farside 12. The objective was simple: test human bioresilience through live samples of their environment. Instead, they brought back something unthinkable: a child. Human. Male. Unharmed. Kairvath didn't report it as a breach. He logged it as unexpected biological asset acquisition, believing it would earn him commendation. Humans, in his mind, were unpredictable but overrated, a chaotic species with loud emotions and primitive attachments. Their young were vulnerable and illogical. What power could one child hold? Within the hour, his logs were flagged and rerouted to high command. The transmission reached Galactic General Threxmol, a veteran of the Coalition's worst battles and one of the few commanders who had faced humans and lived. He read the report twice. His skin paled, the digits of his hands curling involuntarily. He stood up, silent, for an uncomfortable length of time. The room, filled with officers and analysts, waited for his verdict. "You fool," he said finally, voice colder than the vacuum between stars. "You stole a human child. Now we all die." Panic didn't erupt immediately. The Varnak were not a species prone to emotional overreaction. Their protocols were clear: identify the threat, assess, mitigate. But even in that structured hierarchy, General Threx's words carried an unspoken truth. This wasn't a situation to be managed. This was a death sentence. The Council demanded clarity. Was this not an overreaction? The humans wouldn't retaliate over a single civilian. They were aggressive, yes, but not irrational. Hadn't the Coalition survived skirmishes before? Threx interrupted them, projecting a sealed archive. Footage played silently. A planet, once green, now a blackened husk. The remnants of a civilization far older than the Varnak. Their mistake? Dissecting a single human scout after an unauthorized border capture. Within days, Earth's response was deployed, not with fleets, but with autonomous hunter drones, viral warfare, and gravity rift technology that no known science could counter. The species vanished in less than a week. It was never publicized. The humans never bragged. They simply wiped their enemies from existence and left the ruins as a warning. "Do not provoke us," the only transmission said, beamed into the Galactic Commons. The Varnak had reviewed those logs, yes, but they convinced themselves it was an exaggeration or perhaps a response to nuclear provocation. Not this. Not for a child. But Threx knew better. "They do not care about strategic logic," he said quietly. "They care about intent, about bonds. You have broken their taboo. They won't declare war. They won't even speak to us. They will simply end us." Kairvath, still unaware of the scale of his offense, tried to argue. He cited curiosity, potential scientific benefit, even interspecies understanding. Threx silenced him with a gesture. "You didn't take a subject. You took their future. Their young are sacred. You've committed a cultural violation worse than genocide. To them, this is personal." A silent order was sent to isolate Kairvath and place him under military arrest. The child, meanwhile, was placed in a bio-neutral containment zone, untouched, unharmed, guarded by 24 Varnak scientists under strict observation. The boy remained calm. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He simply watched them, silently, unblinking. It disturbed the staff in ways they couldn't explain. Threx initiated Red Directive 12, full defense mobilization. The order hadn't been used in 2 generations. Civilian travel halted. Warships moved into defensive positions. Border stations were fortified. Still, nothing came. No ships. No threats. Not even a demand. Just silence. And that, more than anything, terrified them. Because when humanity is silent, it means they're thinking, calculating, choosing their moment. And when they act, it's already too late. The general stood before the Coalition's highest command the next day. "We have made an existential mistake," he said. "We must begin immediate diplomatic overtures." Return the child at once. Offer reparations. Grovel if we must. But what if they do not listen? Asked the commander. Threx didn't answer right away. He turned back to the projection. The face of the boy, still quietly observing, as if waiting for something. Not rescue. Not fear. Certainty. He finally spoke. Then pray they never decide to make an example of us. The chamber fell into grim silence. Far from the core worlds, on a quiet blue planet wrapped in storm clouds and silence, Earth had already noticed, and it had already begun to remember. The hours stretched into days. No communication came from Earth. Not a word, not a signal, not even a basic diplomatic ping. For the Varnak coalition, this silence was abnormal. Humans were loud. They complained, protested, and issued ultimatums. They didn't ignore insults. They responded. The lack of response was not peace. It was a countdown. Within 72 hours, all trade channels connected to human-aligned sectors had gone dark. Civilian freighters failed to report in. Orbital beacons along the neutral buffer zones blinked out one by one. And yet, not a single explosion. No open hostilities. Just empty corridors of space and severed lines of contact. The coalition's intelligence nexus analyzed the situation and presented its conclusion to the High Command. The result was chilling. No known fleet movements. No diplomatic activity. No pattern to predict. Human silence is deliberate, strategic, unknown intention. General Threx didn't need clarification. He already knew. Earth wasn't sending a fleet. It was preparing for something worse. The kind of retaliation that couldn't be traced, couldn't be reasoned with. They weren't just responding to a breach. They were crafting a message. He addressed the Grand Assembly with unwavering calm. We are not in a war. We are in a trial. One we will not be told about until the sentence is passed. The Varnak public remained unaware, but the inner circles were spiraling. Delegates from allied species withdrew from diplomatic stations without explanation. Defense treaties were quietly nullified. Even long-standing partners refused to answer encrypted calls. A single phrase began spreading through back channels. They took one of theirs. It wasn't just a child. It was a line no species crossed. Humans didn't just value their young. They revered them. In their cultures, children were everything. Innocence, legacy, purpose. To take one was to steal hope itself. And that made humanity respond in a way no calculation could predict. Records from previous incidents resurfaced. Incursions, slaughters, even total species erasures. The Jathri Collective, once boasting a superior navy, disappeared after executing 3 human prisoners, 2 of them minors. Their sun collapsed a month later under inexplicable gravitational stress. The event had been labeled natural. Now, that explanation looked absurd. Others remembered the Solari Pact's mistake, using orphans as leverage in negotiations. The humans hadn't retaliated militarily. Instead, Solari economic networks fell to coordinated cyberattacks. Their food supply vanished, automated factories turned against their populations, and their ruling class was exposed for decades of corruption. Not a single human ship fired, but their empire fell in weeks. Kai Arvath, detained in a high-security cell, finally began to grasp the scale of what he had triggered. His requests for counsel, for justification, were ignored. There was nothing to argue. His mistake wasn't in tactics. It was in violating an unwritten law older than any treaty. You do not harm their young. You do not touch their young. The boy, still calm, now resided in a specialized containment facility protected by planetary-level shielding. Psychological experts observed him for signs of stress. Instead, they found composure, stillness. Occasionally, the boy would glance upward, as if sensing something far beyond the station walls. Every moment, Coalition defense grids scanned the stars, expecting hyperspace jumps or mass fleets. But they knew this wasn't going to be an invasion. The fear wasn't in battle. It was in being unmade. The first signal came on the 5th day. Not a message, not a call, just a single encrypted packet buried in the Varnak's central network, a place humans had supposedly never breached. The message read, "Return what is ours." Nothing more. No name, no location, no demands, just a statement. The encryption was human military grade, years beyond what any known species could decode. Its presence meant the humans had already infiltrated Varnak command systems. The Coalition's most secure networks, impenetrable by design, had been read like an open book. General Threx issued a full-spectrum alert. Military AI systems were disconnected from central nodes. All command staff were instructed to purge devices. The Varnak homeworld skies were emptied of non-essential craft. Still, they knew it was too late. If the humans had accessed their networks undetected, nothing remained private. Plans, weaknesses, even internal arguments, they already knew. The High Council debated appeasement. Offer the child, open borders, pledge reparations. But none of it mattered. The humans weren't speaking. They were watching, judging, measuring every word, every hesitation, every delay. And then Earth disappeared. All Earth-based systems stopped transmitting. Civilian channels, scientific stations, diplomatic outposts, all went dark. Even the automated commerce systems vanished from the galactic net, as if Earth itself had folded inward and left a void. Panic gripped the inner circles. That was no shutdown. That was a signal, a warning. Humanity had gone quiet. And when predators go silent, it means they've found their target. The first sign was a silence deeper than before. Not the absence of communication, but of presence. Orbital stations that once blinked across the Varnak outer sectors vanished without distress calls. Patrol vessels reported sensor static, then ceased transmitting. At first, these were treated as malfunctions. Then came the proof. A surveillance drone recovered from the Gortha's expanse showed footage of a Coalition war cruiser intact one moment, then hollowed out in the next. No explosion, no energy weapon, just a void, a precise extraction of everything vital within the ship. Crew, systems, AI core gone. The hull floated, cold and untouched. General Threx didn't call it war. He called it the opening act. Fleet Command initiated full lockdown across all strategic zones. Civilian comms were restricted. Traffic halted. Varnak systems fell into controlled martial silence. But silence did not equal safety. On the sixth day, hundreds of small anomalies began appearing in Varnak network logs. At first, just corrupted files and isolated outages. Then logistics systems went haywire, supplies rerouted, fleet registries scrambled, communication keys erased. In over a dozen instances, internal command orders were overwritten with new directives no one claimed to authorize. Human cyber warfare had begun. There were no demands, no propaganda, no attempt to justify. Only clinical, targeted collapse. Factories shut down mid-cycle. Planetary defenses pointed at their own cities. Automated medical AI began misdiagnosing patients with conditions that didn't exist, resulting in a cascade of chaos that overloaded civilian infrastructure. And still, no human ships in sight. General Threx met with the remaining Coalition leadership behind sealed doors. The meeting lasted 6 hours. When he emerged, his expression had changed. He was no longer a commander preparing for battle. He was a survivor preparing for extinction. They have already decided, he told his staff. This is not retaliation. This is disassembly. The boy, still under containment, was now treated not as a prisoner or asset, but as a divine warning. Guards rotated hourly. None stayed long. The child didn't speak. He didn't eat much. But the facility's security logs showed something no one could explain. External systems around the facility were untouched. Untouched by power outages. Untouched by cyber sabotage. As if he were being shielded. Then, a human voice arrived on all Varnak military frequencies simultaneously. Calm. Female. Human accent untraceable. Just 6 words. You were warned. Return what is ours. And then, silence again. Kir Vath, isolated and watched, begged for a tribunal. He claimed ignorance, academic curiosity, scientific detachment. He argued he had done no harm. His words were recorded, transcribed, ignored. The High Council no longer debated guilt. Only consequences. Attempts to return the child failed. On the 7th day, A stealth shuttle carrying the boy was launched without broadcasting destination. It disintegrated seconds after launch. There were no signs of a weapons lock. No enemy engagement. It was simply removed. Another message followed within the hour. No bargains. No excuses. You chose. Threx gathered his remaining command for what he called the last protocol. There was no victory condition. No defense plan. Just a plea. Deliver the child. Admit guilt. Offer complete surrender. It was too late. Reports came in. Not a battle, but a vanishing. 2 fleet armadas disappeared mid-transit. Their arrival beacons never activated. No debris, no aftermath. Just thousands of ships and personnel erased. The stars where they should have arrived remained undisturbed. Economic centers across the Varnak worlds began to collapse under coordinated software failures. Agricultural domes lost pressure. Life support failed in orbiting habitats. Every system that had ever touched human-compatible networks was compromised. Some whispered that humanity hadn't even launched an attack, that everything was preceded years ago, waiting for a single trigger. Threx faced the High Council for the last time. This is not war as we understand it. They're not fighting. They are ending us. In a final gesture, Threx authorized a planet-wide transmission to Earth. A single unencrypted plea. We return the child. We surrender. We seek mercy. No reply came. Instead, the Varnak homeworld's primary AI grid reactivated with a different voice. The same woman, calm, spoke again. Protocol concluded. Observe and learn. This is restraint. Within minutes, full systems across the Varnak core re-engaged. Lights returned. Networks stabilized. Food systems resumed operation. Civilian sectors revived. No destruction, no retaliation, but their military was gone. Their fleets wiped. Defense codes irreparably corrupted. Their entire infrastructure stood but powerless, dependent, exposed. And at the center of it all, the child now stood on Varnak Prime's central plaza, unharmed, unguarded, transported by means unknown. The coalition did not collapse. It was allowed to continue, but under terms no one negotiated. Terms dictated in silence, enforced without fleets, agreed upon without signatures. The Varnak became a shadow of their former power, preserved only because humanity had chosen not to destroy them completely. That choice was not mercy. It was message. Other species took notice. What they saw wasn't a military victory. It was precision extinction avoided by inches. The Varnak had been dissected, disabled, and left standing, not out of kindness, but to demonstrate capacity. Humanity had spoken without saying a word, and now every empire listened. On Varnak Prime, monuments were quietly taken down. Historical records were redacted. Every file referencing project acquisition was deleted. Kirvatha's name was stripped from the archives. He was neither executed nor imprisoned. He vanished. Rumors claimed he had been handed over. Others said he walked into a black transport and was never seen again. No one asked questions. The boy disappeared the same day. One moment he stood in the plaza, surrounded by silent observers. The next he was gone. No ship, no escort, no trace. Surveillance didn't catch his departure. No one was surprised. That had been the plan all along. The humans didn't need gates or corridors. They had already been everywhere they needed to be. General Threx retired 3 days later. No ceremony, no farewell. He submitted a single-page report and walked away from 5 decades of command. When asked why, he gave only one reason. We gotta live. That's enough. In the following months, the coalition rebuilt its infrastructure, but the changes were deep. No more exploration near human space. No more biological studies involving their species. No more arrogance masked as science. Varnak science councils passed new codes of conduct. No contact with human juveniles, no experiments, no surveillance. Not because of fear, but because of understanding. Humanity's message wasn't revenge. It was principle, a declaration that some boundaries were not negotiable, that some lines, once crossed, didn't offer a way back. And the rest of the galaxy watched and learned. Trade resumed slowly. A few neutral worlds acted as intermediaries. communications re-established, carefully, always on human terms. Earth didn't respond with threats or conditions. They simply allowed things to function again when and how they chose. No explanation, no commentary. Whispers spread across galactic forums. Stories of the child incident passed from diplomat to soldier to scientist. No official statement existed, but everyone knew. Human silence had rewritten the rules of engagement. No longer could any power view them as chaotic or impulsive. Humanity had shown calculation, precision, control. That was the part that terrified everyone. In hidden strategy chambers, military analysts rewrote their doctrines. Simulations involving human retaliation were locked behind classified encryption. Risk assessments ranked Earth not as a regional power, but as a deterrent species, one whose response to provocation defied conventional logic. Other governments began implementing protocols, contingency plans for accidental contact, emergency procedures in case of human outrage. Entire diplomatic divisions were assigned solely to maintain peaceful relations. Humanity had, without firing a single public shot, become the most respected and feared civilization in known space. And still, Earth said nothing. The boy's identity was never disclosed. No calls for justice followed. No official inquiry was made. Humanity didn't request an apology. They didn't need one. Their message had already arrived. Over time, new generations of Varnak children learned the story not through textbooks, but cautionary tales. Do not provoke the silent ones. Respect the fragile. Some forces speak without sound. These weren't superstitions. They were warnings wrapped in culture, burned into memory. In private, the Varnak High Council kept one object sealed in a vault beneath the capital. A fragment of the transmission, just a copy of the 6-word phrase that began their fall. You were warned. Return what is ours. It sat beneath 5 layers of security, never discussed, never activated. But it remained a silent relic of the moment they realized the universe had changed. And beyond the stars, Earth continued as it always had. Quiet, observing, creating, advancing. But now, with the eyes of the galaxy upon it, every movement measured, every decision watched. Not because of fear alone, but because of respect earned through restraint, through power held back rather than unleashed. There was no war, no memorials, no heroes to celebrate. Just a single lesson, now encoded into galactic law by the actions of one species. You do not take what belongs to humanity. And if you do, you will not hear their fury. You will feel it.